Yo, what's going on, Serpa Squad? Tanner here. I'm gonna be at Aquashell, Chicago in a couple weeks, so if you're going, I'll see you there. But for me to be able to go on these trips and make sure everything's gonna be alright with my animals and stuff, I gotta prep way in advance. So I gotta do a lot of stuff with them. I have to make multiple videos so that way I have something to upload in my absence, and just all kinds of other stuff. So I'm tying up loose odds and ends right now, and I'm headed to my parents' house first. I'll do a quick update on the pond, show you what's going on. So here we are after a couple weeks. I don't know about you, but I think it's really looking good. All the plants in the water area are really perked up. The lilies are filling in. And just overall, I mean, it's looking pretty good. I also added some new driftwood in front of the overflow here to hide it from the front. We're still just waiting on that faux rock to put over top, but once we do, you won't even know that that's there. And I also put a little bit more driftwood over top of the spillway, so it's pretty cool. There's only one major issue that I see with it right now, but we're early enough along that I could get it addressed. And there's some string algae forming on the waterfall right here. It's probably up in the main area as well, but given the nature of where this is situated, it gets a lot of direct sunlight probably for, I don't know, half the day or so. I would say, you know, a good 6 hours or so it's getting direct sunlight, and the body of water is not very large. So with that, unfortunately, you get the algae. So I'll get that addressed. I'll film whatever I do with it. And something that we did actually the other day was my mom, she kept talking about how she wanted to get her fish for in here. So I took her out to get her fish. My initial idea was to get rosy red minnows. I wanted to get a ton of them for in here because the pond's not that big. And I think something like that would be pretty cool. You know, I picture like 150 red rosies just swimming around in here in a school. I thought that would be pretty cool, and once I showed her what they looked like, she was not having it. She just said, I need a fish that's gonna have more personality. I need something that I'm gonna be able to see. Long story short, she didn't want them. She wanted goldfish, so I got her 5 comet goldfish. We've got 2 Sarasa, 2 of the regular just orange ones, and then 1 Shubunkin. And they're not very big right now, maybe like 3.5, 4 inches or so. So that, you know, they're not too big, and they seem to really enjoy the pond. And also they've got a resident frog right there. He showed up the other day, which is pretty cool. You know, you build it and they show up. Who knows where they come from, but they find the water. So I love that because obviously we have Wellington at our house, and then now they have one. It's been here for several days now, and apparently they feed it now like how I do with Wellington. So overall, I mean, it's doing really well. The only thing though is that now, since it does house goldfish, my thing was like, sure, they could live in here for the duration of their life, but they're gonna get pretty big, you know, 10 inches or so. And I just don't think this is a large enough body of water. So we could go one of 2 routes with it. The first one, of course, is just, hey, I'll take these goldfish, I'll put them in my pond because it's like 6 times the size of this one. Or I'll just expand the pond. I actually think that's what I want to do. My mom was saying she's fine with it as it is, but I think I want to make it bigger. So maybe next year, like see how it is now, I'll expand it all the way out to here. So I don't know if I would just make like a little stream and connect it to, so basically just build a second one and then connect it from a stream in between, or just take out everything in the bottom here, dig this out, and then just make one big basin. So I'm open to ideas. You let me know what you think about that, but I'm fairly certain that's what I want to do. I just want to maximize the area back here. I think that to keep the fish here long term, because I'm sure my mom's going to get attached to them, that's probably the best solution. But otherwise, I'm excited about this, and I'm so glad that I was able to do it for my parents. They really love it. They're always out here apparently watching it. And so one of the other things I wanted to talk about is the 180-gallon vivarium here. Now, this is quite a saga with this tank. I believe at this point it's been set up for at least 4 years, but prior to that, I actually built it for my king snake Houdini. I didn't really think it was an ideal setup for him, so I put him somewhere else, and then I turned it into this vivarium, and he's still doing fine to this day, obviously. But this setup, I mean, although at first glance you're probably thinking it does look pretty good, it's not doing quite as well as it had been. Now, it was a somewhat experimental setup, and whenever I first did it, I obviously didn't build it with the intent for it being a vivarium, so I kind of retrofitted that and made it what it is today. And although that did work, it wasn't a good long-term solution, as you'll see in just a moment. As many of you know, the initial plan for this setup, of course, was to stock it with dart frogs. Now, it never really panned out that way just because, in my mind, I never really felt like the setup was as ideal as it could be for them. That's largely due to the fact that I was always experimenting with here, doing things off camera with the plants, trying different plants, taking things out, putting new things in, and I really just kind of used it as a testing ground for various techniques and such. And so with that, I don't like to stress my animals out constantly being in their setups and doing things like that. Now, trimming plants and doing water changes and that sort of thing, that's one thing. But if I'm in here removing plants all the time, putting new things in and stuff, it's just not really ideal, especially for something like a dart frog. They kind of like the consistency of a setup, for things to sort of stay the same. So now I did plan on doing it, but it was never really something I wanted to do the longer that I had this setup. Now, one of the main issues that I'm having is with the background. You'll see back there that the XPS foam is peeking through the cocoa fiber liner. It's going on here and in other areas, I'm sure, and that's not ideal. Now, that background did work pretty well because it retained water and encouraged root growth of plants up it and all that sort of thing. But if it's falling apart like that, or degrading rather, it's just not doing what it once did, and the plants aren't thriving as they once did as a result. Now, we have a similar thing going on with the jungle vines. They were just a piece of cotton rope that I encased in silicone and cocoa fiber, and although they still look good, if you really pull on them, they'll just kind of snap and fall apart, and that's because the rope on the inside, it's probably not even there anymore. It's degraded completely, and all that we have remaining is the cocoa fiber and the silicone, so that's an issue as well. Another thing that happened, which is pretty stupid and careless on my end, is that once I moved this to a different spot in the room, I didn't set up the timer properly, and the lights weren't on for probably about a week and a half, and the fans weren't going. So without the air circulation and light, a lot of the plants died back, so it was stupid on my end. Now, I'm sure you see where I'm going with this. The background is not holding up, the plants aren't doing as well as they once did, and that can only mean one thing. The setup is never going to house dart frogs. I know it's what the initial idea was, but I have a better idea for this tank. Just wanted to pop in real quick and say that dart frogs in the animal room definitely are still a thing. I'm actually working on something behind the scenes right now to make that happen. And of course what that means is I'm going to have to dismantle this enclosure. It was by far my favorite in its heyday. I just love the way that it looked, the jungle vibe. That's hands down my favorite look for a tank, but it's not doing what it once did. And I could easily just reuse all of these plants. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get in here and take this thing apart. And thus concludes the saga of the 180. At least for now. I have an awesome plan for it that I think you guys are going to enjoy even more than what I had originally planned. Before I can do that though, I gotta make some modifications to the tank. I gotta cut side ventilation holes in it like I did for the 600. I also want to chop the top off and put casters on the bottom so I can get this into a stand and be more efficient about the space. I also think I'm going to replace these doors with sliding glass doors to reduce the amount of hardware on the front, just to get it to match that minimal look of the stance I've been building as of late. Now, some of you may be wondering, what happened to all of the plants you had in this setup? Well, if you saw the video I did on the 600 a couple weeks ago and were paying close attention, I actually took everything from within this tank and consolidated it into that one. Which makes sense because that one is essentially the successor to this one. It's the same vision, basically. Like, I just wanted a jungle type of tank. So I just took everything from this tank and put it into that one. That's really all I have to say about this one for now though. I'm going to get started on the modifications as soon as I can, and I cannot wait to share with you what's next for this one. It's going to be absolutely incredible. Another thing I wanted to briefly discuss is that the other day, unfortunately, we lost my wife's betta, Ellie. Now, this is one of those events where I kind of just, you don't really think it would happen. I mean, I've been keeping fish for over 14 years easy. And as you know, most of my tanks are rimless. I never have had any issues with fish jumping out all of these years, so you always think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. My fish are fine or whatever. But the one night I was feeding everybody and Ellie didn't come up to greet us as usual. and I knew something was wrong, so I was kind of looking in the overflow because I thought maybe somehow she got in there. I was kind of thinking probably not, because it's the way that it's set up, it's not really like that could happen, but you never know. So I looked, that wasn't the case. I'm looking around, and I knew that she jumped out, so I started looking around, and eventually I found her, and you know, she was dried up on the floor, unfortunately. So it was pretty sad. Harder for my wife because that was her fish, of course, and so to commemorate her, I made a little origami box, wrapped her up, and put her in there, and then buried her in the front yard by the pond. I put a little plant on there, as I typically do, to commemorate her, and it's a perennial, so it will come up year after year and just be a nice remembrance of her. But I didn't want to talk too much about that. I just wanted to mention real quickly that unfortunately that happened. So it's just something to think about when you're keeping your fish. After that, I figure we should end this one on a high note. Here, give me a second. You know how it goes. I got to get everybody hyped up before I feed them. So, obviously, I feel like you guys know what I'm going to show you. The little man is right back in here. He's usually a little late to the party, so here, let's give him a second. And that, my friends, that's Petey. Yep, that is him. He's at least doubled. Honestly, he may have even tripled in size since we put him in here, and he is loving it. He's looking incredible, as you can see his colors. Oh, my guy back there wanted to make his cameo. But yeah, as you can see, he grew in nicely, and he's really loving it. But the crazy thing was, so put him in here, right? I didn't think that there was any other babies in here, but as it turns out, right after he was living in here right after he was living in here for a day or two, I noticed that, oh, yep, there's one right over here. I don't know if you can see it, but there's at least 10 babies living in here. I saw probably about 4 shoebunkin, several of the orange ones, and yeah, so it's pretty cool. So Petey's got some younger siblings, and everybody else is just welcoming them to the family. So this guy's just gonna keep interrupting me, so I think I'm gonna end it there. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Changing things up. Let me know what you think about what I'm gonna do with everything. And if you check back to last week's video on the butterfly split fin, I gave a little bit of a Easter egg as to what I'm gonna do with the 180. So if you can find that, let me know. Anyway, I'm heading out. Until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.